Yeah. You can see it there now. They had another record. They said, this is... I said, no, it isn't. It's one of Hans Duda's records that he made in Germany. They thought that was the original animal. So we told them, no, this is the original Happening record, made in December 1966. It's funny how it became a worldwide sensation. There was a radio station. Once we got the record, we got to sell it. So I used to put it in record stores, wholesale, and they would sell it retail. It sold a lot in the stores. The hippie shops, the bookstores, record stores. Anyway, we really wanted to get the public to know about it. So there's a radio station called WBAI. And this radio station had its antenna on the Empire State Building. So the signal, they would only come on at 12 o'clock at night till 6 or 7 in the morning when everybody's off the air. And the signal could reach London, England, and South America.
Wow.
And so it was a hip place. Like Bob Dylan showed up, the Beatles showed up, the Rolling Stones came, Allen Ginsberg, all the famous people in the entertainment and philosophy, singers would come and they would interview. And it was like, it wasn't planned. So you had to listen every night to see who's on. So it was a very popular station all over the world because it had a strong signal. So I said, I'm going to go up there and bring the record. So about 11:30, I took a subway and got there around 12:30, 12:15. I said, I got a record I want you to play. They heard a Hare Krishna. Yeah. So they played it. And everybody was high. The room was smoky with marijuana. Even I got high, just breathing in the second smoke, And they played the record non-stop for about 6 hours with no commercial. And they were all into it. Finally, I just fell asleep on the table. Where they interview everybody. It's a table. And they played the record. From that record, that's how George Harrison got interested. From hearing that on the station. He ordered 300 copies to give to his friends.
That was way before Shamsundar.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We're speaking about 1966.
Yeah. One day, about a week or two after I went there, a courier comes with a big box. There must have been 500 letters in there. They all want the record. I told them how much it is. We were getting letters with $3 checks or $3. They only cost $3. And then I had special boxes so you could slide the record in and ship it. And we sold so many records just from that radio program. We got letters from South America, from everywhere, in Europe, in Amsterdam, every place. It was very successful marketing.
And how did you put the record, made the record?
That was Mr. Coleman. There was in the middle of October, there was an article in the New York Times There were 3 articles all in 1 month, which changed Prabhupada's life. You know. Before that, Prabhupada had acquaintances. And even the people he initiated very rarely came to the temple. It was more of a fashion to have a guru. There was nothing organized. Although ISKCON was incorporated, there was no ISKCON. You know. So when these 3 articles came out in October, it was the Village Voice and the East Village Other and the New York Times, which was the biggest newspaper of the day. The New York Times said, Prabhupada remarked, now my movement has started. Because the New York Times goes all over the world. And it was a very favorable, we didn't even know the man was there. And he took a picture, that's this picture. That's from the New York Times. They put the picture in the newspaper.
You cut it from the newspaper?
No, not that one. That's probably a JPEG.
And there was another one that Prabhupada stands by the tree, right? And
That's another newspaper called the East Village Other. That one, the editor came to the park and heard it. And when he heard it, he had his camera, he always carried his camera with him. Took pictures. Something? You want punny?
No, it's okay.
So he said he went right back to his newspaper place, said we're changing everything. We're going to do a story on the Swamiji because he's a poor Swami in the poorest section of New York. The other Swamis and yogis lived in the high style. They wore Western dress. But here's a real Swami in Indian cloth. They never saw that. So he did actually the most comprehensive article on Prabhupada's life and how he got to America. I mean, he did a whole interview. It was a very good article. In fact, 50 years later, Satyaraj interviewed the same man. I think he's in his 70s or 80s, who did the article and why he did it. It was in Back to Godhead. I think I got it on my computer someplace.
That article?
The new one.
The new one, okay.
I have the old one too. See, at that time, there were thousands and thousands of psychedelic newspapers. There were thousands of them. So, they were mostly read by the hip people and the artists and the philosophers and the musicians. They didn't read the regular newspaper because they didn't believe it. You know, so they read they call them the underground newspapers. So they were very. I have an original from 1966. I saved one. I passed it around in the class so people could look to see how the design was of these newspapers, all psychedelic. The art and everything.
Was it color?
No, it was black and white. But they were very popular. And so this East Village Other, it didn't just go to New York, it went to every major city in America. And so and then there was another one called the Village Voice, was on the west side. We were on the east side. And they wrote a favorable article. So Prabhupada, you know, he kept a diary. But Prabhupada became so busy with meeting people And with the classes, the place was packed every night. He didn't have time to make entry in his diary. My initiation is the last entry, really. There was a few days where he wrote how much he spent and how much was the collection, and then finished. But mine was the last major entry. And then he stopped because he was so busy. So these 3 newspapers really changed Prabhupada because the movement really got momentum. Plus, a few months later, the record. So this Mr. Coleman, he made records of people, famous people who spoke, like Malcolm X, who was he was a black man who led the revolution against the apartheid in America. America had apartheid, like South Africa. Blacks couldn't go on the bus. In school, I didn't even know that. They never taught us that. I thought all Americans are equal. They kept it a secret in the history books. I didn't know a black man or black lady had to sit in the back of the bus, and if a white man came, they had to get up for him. They never taught us that. Yeah, in all the southern states, 20 states. I didn't know that a black man couldn't eat in a white restaurant. They had to have their own restaurant. Or if it was in a white restaurant, they had their own section. They couldn't sit with white people. They never taught us that in history. I thought everybody's equal. I mean, there was such apartheid. This land of the free and home of the brave is all bullshit. Sorry about the language, but it's the truth. Otherwise, why didn't I know this in high school when they taught me American history? They didn't mention that. So it's all bogus. So he did records of these famous people. So he called up Brahmananda. He called up the temple. He said, I want to do a record. So Brahmananda made an appointment. He came to see the Swami. But Prabhupada wasn't so keen on records because he saw it as sentimental. They'll listen to this record and another record. But no, Mr. Coleman says, no, but you can speak. And then Prabhupada said, oh, I can speak? Oh, then I will do. That was the main thing, is preaching. So he did kirtan and preaching. Now that record was never rehearsed. We set up a day for recording. We didn't know who was going to show up for the recording at the temple. And Prabhupada didn't have a drum. He had that little tom-tom. The day before, it was in the evening, a black man came and he had a big wooden mridanga from South India. And he let Prabhupada borrow it for the recording. It's amazing. It's a big mridanga made of wood. And he used that in the record. And the record was so successful, nobody sung out of tune. Everybody was singing properly. It's the best record of Hare Krishna ever made. They tried to duplicate it in Bombay years later. But everybody's ego got in the way and they were singing off tune and harmonizing. And the record company said it's not useful. I have parts of it. There was one prayer which came out good. The rest of it, it was out of key, and Jamuna and others were trying to harmonize. It just wasn't worth making a record. But this one, there was no rehearsal, nothing, and it came out perfect. As you may have heard it. You heard the Happening record? And Prabhupada's speech? So that's how we got started with Mr. Coleman. And then he became a permanent business partner with ISKCON. He even helped us open a shop called Krishna Imports. And we would import clothing and incense, to help the temple with its finances. Because at that time there was no book distribution. There was magazine, but people didn't know how to preach because we didn't have any real books to learn from, and the books that we had, we were just reading. We weren't studying and repeating properly. We were all less than neophyte. So, anyway, that's how the record got pressed, the original Happening record. And then later on, 2 years later, a devotee named Dinesh recorded another record with Prabhupada, which is very nice. Krishna Kirtana. And it was recorded at the Ali Akbar School of Music in California. And you'll hear there's a sarod and a tambour on that. That were some students that joined with Prabhupada in bringing in Indian instruments. But they were Americans. And that came out very nice because it was a real good sound studio. But he wanted Prabhupada to sign a contract.
Coleman. No, that in the school.
Huh?
Who wanted to sign a contract with Prabhupada?
Dinesh.
Dinesh.
He wanted Prabhupada to sign a contract so he could have copyright. And Prabhupada said, I cannot copyright Hare Krishna. This is for everybody. It's mentioned in the Shastra. Prabhupada didn't use the business argument against the person. He encouraged him to make the record, but he wouldn't sign the paper, which, the man was, the devotee was, he was initiated, upset about. Anyway, that was a good record. And the cover of that was done by the first senior citizen to join. It was a woman. She was 60 years old at the time. She joined in Los Angeles. Her name was Devahudi. And she made the painting. It's Krishna standing inside a lotus flower, and Radharani's at his feet. You may have seen it. He gave a title to that called Super Excellent. A title to that painting. Yeah, it might be in one of the movies. And she painted that. She painted another nice one too, a huge painting. We put it in the old LA temple of Radha and Krishna on the swing.
Oh, okay.
And Prabhupada really...
Is it the one from Nectar of Devotion?
I think so, yeah. Okay. That's the one, the original Nectar of Devotion. That was done by Devahudi. And Prabhupada every day would ask me, are you taking care of her? She's an old lady. Make sure she had proper food, proper clothes. She had the paints to paint. Prabhupada was really concerned about her because she's the first old lady to join. Prabhupada never... Well, it's when I was in LA, I was the president, so it was 1968. That record was sold. That painting was used on the cover of that other record. So that became a popular record also. Because, like I said, it was recorded at the Ali Akbar School of Music. So I had to be real careful that she wouldn't complain to Prabhupada. Because one thing a manager did not want is devotees writing letters to Prabhupada complaining against the manager. So we had to be very careful, you see. Fortunately, I never had anybody write a letter against my management in LA. I had to be a psychiatrist, because most of the devotees, maybe half, were crazies. And they all had these personal problems. And I had to try and solve the problem. And some of the women were flirting with the brahmacharis, so I had to talk to them about Vedic culture. You know, in this way, try and make everybody happy. So we were like one happy family. You know, there was no politics in those days. There was no ego. Everybody just wanted to please Prabhupada. You see, that's called oneness in diversity, where everybody is one in the service, but we're all diverse individuals. And it worked out. Now it's diversity and no oneness. You have different groups, different Hare Krishna groups, different organizations. That's what happens to every religion. It happened with Christianity. Atreya Rishi said to Prabhupada at the time in the 70s, I think it was 1975 in Tehran, that there were 780 different branches of Islam at that time. Who knows how many there are now. And during Prabhupada's time in the 60s, he mentions in the introduction, there was something like 670 Bhagavad Gita translations. And they're all wrong. You know. So that happens. So it has to happen with Prabhupada, because devotees join for different reasons. And the different concepts to maintain the original teaching is very difficult, because almost in every religion it's changed. In the Bible, the Old Testament, King James changed it according to the politics. And then Jesus, well, that took 300 years to evolve. When he was crucified, every one of his disciples left him. They gave him up to the Romans. They said, I didn't know him. And then all of a sudden they write about him years later. I don't accept that. You know, who knows? There's no disciplic succession. So we're fortunate in ISKCON we have a disciplic succession. So although many people are manufacturing those devotees who are studying Prabhupada books, they can actually find the manufacturing and point it out. But for that, they will be banned. If they point out the manufacturing, they'll get banned. You have to accept that because that's what happens. The original teaching gets perverted. So that perversion will get worse and worse as time goes on. Because when you become an institution with money, then people's interests change. They look at their lives as a career. Especially in India, which is a poor country, and there are no jobs, although we have educated devotees, some of them, they look at ISKCON as a good job. They get food, They don't become a burden amongst their families economically. So they join ISKCON. Of course, they have a tendency to steal. It happened back in the 70s. The treasurer of Bombay was a thief. He stole 50,000 rupees, which at that time was $800 to $1,000. It was a lot of money. 7 rupees to $1. What's that in dollars? 7 divided 50,000. Anyway.
But yeah, Prabhupada speaks about this electoral devotion that some join us because of some economic issue, and when their economic development is arranged to some extent that we.
Yeah.
So that happened quite a lot.
Yeah, quite a lot. Even with people who were disgusted with material life, they come to us, Krishna, and they get a little purified and a little strong, and then they go back out to material life and enjoy more. So that's happened too. And unfortunately, because of the manufacturing, I call it the manufacturing 80s. The 1980s was the worst for ISKCON because 4,000 original devotees, it's estimated by Tamal Krishna in an article he wrote, that 4,000 active devotees left active service because of the manufacturing in the 80s. I mean, it got to a point, it was reckless, where because of the gurus, they had to make, every temple had to have 12 Vyasasanas. And if one Vyasasana was 1 inch higher than another, then that means, oh, he's better than me. Finally, the temples just burned all the Vyasasanas. It was ridiculous. It would put a great strain financially, because sometimes 2 or 3 gurus would show up, and they had to have their special Vyasasanas for each one of them. It's ridiculous. But these are things are manufactured because we were in advance. And therefore, in the appointment tapes, if you listen very closely and study, you will see Prabhupada says on 2 occasions, on my order, you will become guru. Well, he never gave the order. He 2 months later, he appointed Ritviks. And in October, 1 month before he disappeared, he didn't even refer to them as Ritvik. He called them deputies. Well, we can see in the material world, a deputy prime minister means nothing. He doesn't do anything. He just eats and sleeps.
Prabhupada called it formality.
Yeah, like a vice president. You know. Actually, I was in a room during the GBC, and I remember Prabhupada, they asked him, who can Prabhupada said, any damn person. He used the word damn. Because he didn't think that we would make it a big thing in ISKCON.
Prabhupada said any damn person.
Yeah, any damn person can initiate, because it's a formality. Prabhupada's the Acharya. The relationship was based on love. He didn't think that we'd want to become him in stature. He thought we loved him.
So it's not like the Ritvik has to be some sort of like a pure devotee.
No, it's nothing. Because if you analyze the actual initiation process, all the worship goes to Agni Dev.
Yes.
The ghee goes to Agni Dev. The banana, the grains, we go saha, saha. We don't throw the ghee on the guru. We don't throw the grain on the... Yeah, we used to throw it at each other maybe, you know. But we never threw it on the... So all the center of attention is on Agni, because Agni Dev is the witness
Yes.
to the initiation, because fire is eternal.
Yes.
So you're eternally accepted
Yes.
in the Sampradaya. This reinitiation
Yes.
is totally bogus,
Of course.
because you've already been initiated. That means you're making Agni Dev minimized.
Yes.
Just like we minimize Prabhupada, so we're going to minimize Agni Dev too. You already got in it. You're already in the Sampradaya.
Yes.
So why get reinitiated? You're going to study Prabhupada's books anyway. Of course, now the people are taking people away from Prabhupada's books and making their own books, which Prabhupada is unnecessary, because Prabhupada's books are very simply written. Anybody can understand them.
So simple, people reason.
Yeah, but I think many of the gurus, they make their books too sophisticated. I looked at one and I didn't even know what he was talking about. It was too sophisticated. So they're actually doing the opposite. They're not simplifying, they're making it more difficult because of ego. They want to leave their mark. They want to imitate the Acharya, which is an offense. And that's because in the material world, everybody thinks that we're all the same. They cannot accept the concept that a person may act like a human, but may be a superhuman. And that was Prabhupada. That is Prabhupada, because he's not dead. He who reasons ill, that Vaishnavas die. That was said by Bhakti Vinod. The Acharyas don't die.
They believe in sound.
And in a letter to Malati in 67, Prabhupada mentions that the Guru can appear anytime, any place the disciple wants him to. And in a letter to me in July of 77, which is the last reply I got, Prabhupada says that I will always be your guide, whether physical present or non-physical. I will always be your guide. So that means the Guru never is dead. Actually, Prabhupada even went further. He said there's no such thing as death. Death is a mental concoction. We transmigrate into another body. There is no death. The living entity is eternal. You see? And even in his body is eternal, but not the same body. He'll get another body. So there's really no such thing as death. It's a mental concoction that, he died. He didn't die because he's in another body. 10 months later, Prabhupada said. It takes approximately 10 months, depending on his sinful, which could last for thousands of years, but that's in demigod years, which could be 1 second in our year,
I like this point you mentioned a lot about this appointment issue, because we have now two parties and they basically claim the same thing, that the representative, the Ritvik or the Guru, doesn't matter how we call him, he has to have some special qualification, either that's an appointment or some Shakti.
Yeah.
But actually they don't understand this point that you mentioned, that Prabhupada actually said that anyone can do that formality.
Yeah, it's a ritual. Why did Prabhupada wait 10 years? If it was so important,
Yes.
why did he wait 10 years to get initiated? There's the proof that Prabhupada says the bond between the Guru and the disciple begins with hearing, not with the fire sacrifice. So we have placed emphasis on the fire sacrifice, on the Diksha, but actually we're a Shiksha line of Acharyas that have passed the information and the Shastras down from one Acharya to another Acharya. That's our real system.
But even when we speak about Diksha, isn't Diksha ultimately the knowledge? Like, sacrifice might be, like some instances, Prabhupada didn't perform fire sacrifice, right?
Yeah, but now the Diksha has become a social formula. The gurus aren't really teaching their disciples. When Prabhupada went to San Francisco, that was his first preaching tour. And he spent 3 months there to train devotees. He didn't just go for 2 days, get the Guru Dakshina and leave. He did the training.
And that's the Diksha.
And is the training. And then when he went to Montreal, which was the next temple, he spent a couple of months there, preaching and training the devotees. It was opened by Hans Duda. It was a bowling alley. I went there and I sprained my ankle because he was filling in the grooves where the ball goes, but he didn't finish. So I was dancing and I twisted my ankle in the groove. I couldn't walk. I cursed him. No, yeah. You know, because I couldn't walk after that. It was a bowling. It was in a good place near a park.
Yeah, the tilak.
Yeah.
The devotees painted is still there.
Oh, that's nice.
Didn't remove it.
And everybody, even the Grihat, like Himavadi Hansaduta, they roped off their living space with sheets, bed sheets.
Okay, before they rented separate.
Yeah, because they had built separate rooms. But it was a huge place.
Okay, they never let us in to see. I've seen the pictures.
Oh. Anyway, Prabhupada went there and preached. So wherever he went to London, he spent many months there. Wherever Prabhupada went on a preaching tour, he spent time to train the disciples. But nowadays, there's no training.
Yes.
They leave that to Prabhupada in his books. So that's Ritvik.
Yeah.
See, Ritvik already exists under their nose. They don't even realize it. They're preaching Ritvik because they're telling people to read Prabhupada's books. That's Ritvik then.
So who's going to do the training?
Yeah. Oh, there's nobody. You got to have a person to train. Just like when you go to a college, you have a book, but you have a teacher too. You can't graduate with a book. Of course, now they do it online, but even online, there's a teacher who appears on the computer.
And that's a Ritvik.
Yeah.
Yeah, we made a joke like this, that
Yeah.
nowadays the gurus, they actually Ritviks. They just do
Yeah.
the ceremony, and the Ritviks
They're
are the
actually,
gurus.
because they don't train the devotees. They sell it off to Prabhupada. You train them. It's a hassle for me to train them because they just want to take the money.
Yes, dakshina.
Yeah, to put in their bank accounts, which, by the way, if they're a sannyasi, they're not allowed to have. No sannyasi can have a bank account. Prabhupada says it clearly in his books. You know. So I didn't have, none of us had bank accounts unless we were authorized by Prabhupada himself. You know, for certain reasons. So, I think they're the richest. I wanted, because I was GBC, after Prabhupada left, I wanted the GBC to have every year that every guru or sannyasi declare their assets publicly.
That was in the 80s?
In the late 70s, maybe. Or during the 70s. Because everybody was dividing the properties. And they were taking the assets of the guru. So I wanted every devotee to know what is their assets being divided. You see? Just like New Vrindavan. Prabhupada called it in many conversations, my New Vrindavan. But New Vrindavan was never put in ISKCON's name. It stayed in Kirtananda, and he gave many excuses why he didn't put it in Prabhupada's name or in the society's name. There were nonsense excuses because he wanted to create his own religion so that ISKCON couldn't take his property away.
But eventually it happened, no?
After he went to jail, yeah.
Oh, wow, so late.
Yeah.
That's like 90...
Yeah, after he went to jail and New Vrindavan dissolved,
Yeah, no one
practically.
be on the paper.
Yeah, there was nothing there. So then ISKCON took control of it and then had it changed in ISKCON's name. Now it's part of ISKCON Temple, you see. So anyway, these things come out later in time, why people join. The ultimate reason comes out in many forms, you see. And so ISKCON has been unable to deal with that. You see, rather they push it under the rug. Now, if a guru breaks the rules, it's kept a secret.
Yeah, because
They have a sannyasi commission and they keep it secret, like the church does. You see, we're influenced by popism,
Yes.
churchism. Prabhupada called it churchanesty,
Yes.
not Christianity, churchanesty. And in the church, you hide all the truth. But this is what happened to the previous Pope Benedict, who was only Pope for a year or less.
Yes.
He resigned. Does anybody know why he resigned? He couldn't counteract the gay lobby in the church. But his secretary secretly released documents to the newspapers showing that the church had to deal with 6,000 pedophiles and retrain them on a secret island in the Caribbean owned by the church. And they'd be sent there to be cured of their disease and then sent to a place like in Africa or some small place where nobody would care if they did pedophilia, you see. Yeah. But they always did it again and again because that's why they came there. Just like what happened in our Gurukul. History repeats itself. Prabhupada said the parents must take care of the Gurukul. They must be responsible. They must do the teaching. What happened is ISKCON legalized prostitution, Prabhupada said, in that a grihasta would have sex, make a child, send it to Gurukul, and then leave the wife and get another girl, make her pregnant, and the same thing over and over again. You see? And Prabhupada said, you have made marriage legalized prostitution in ISKCON by encouraging the grihastas to get divorced when there's not supposed to be any divorce. You see? So that destroyed the Varna ashrama system. And what happened? They hired strange people off the street who said, I love children. But they were so naive, they didn't think that they were loving children for pedophilia. And so our Gurukulis were abused by pedophiles because they did not follow Prabhupada's order that the parents take care. The parents gave up on the kids. They would see them once a year. Why? Because the children were burdens of sex life. When you have a child, you gotta spend your whole life with the child to educate, to deal with the sickness. You have to work and spend money. It's the burden of sex life. So what Prabhupada preached against, we actually did. We made prostitution in ISKCON. Very convenient. So in many respects, we have not fulfilled Prabhupada's desires. And that's what we should be actually thinking about, is trying to fulfill the desires of the previous Acharya. But nobody's doing that. They're fulfilling their personal desires, the present gurus, you see. So this is the problem. And ISKCON will continue to have these problems until we correct ourselves in the proper way that Prabhupada wanted ISKCON to be run, and that you'll find in all the books and conversations, lectures.
What would you say is the most urgent thing to correct?
Well, I think that we shouldn't just remember Prabhupada on Vyas Puja and disappearance. We should glorify him every day. And we should institute Ishtagoshti, where devotees can ask questions and get answers. That's why some of my classes took 3 or 4 hours, because the gurus don't have time to answer questions. If you have 50,000 or 20,000 disciples, how are you going to answer all those questions? They don't. They said, just read Prabhupada's books. Well, that's Ritvik. You're already a Ritvik. You're preaching Ritvik, and you don't even know it because you're stupid. You got no brain substance. You see?
And the Ritviks, they have to do the job of the guru.
Yeah, and the Ritviks are doing the job of the guru by answering questions. And then they get banned because they answer the questions. Because the gurus won't answer, or the gurus will give the wrong answer. Like Radhanath, I saw his video, he said Krishna did miracles in Vrindavan. But I found a question where Prabhupada, somebody said, did Krishna do miracles? And Prabhupada said, no, this is Leela. There are no miracles. This is the love. And he used the example of Govardhan Hill when Krishna lifted on his finger. Nanda Maharaj used his stick to help his son. He thought he was helping his son lift a big mountain.
Okay, that's why the stick.
That's the love, the Yoga Maya. That's not a miracle. You see, that's the Leela of love. And then Prabhupada said, miracles are for the ignorant. Did Radhanath say that in his class? No, because he doesn't read, he doesn't know. He tells jokes only in his classes. He answers his cell phone on the Vyasasana, thus insulting Veda Vyas, and tells jokes on the Vyasasana to entertain people, but he doesn't preach. What Prabhupada's teaching is, as Prabhupada has taught us, not how they teach us. We have to preach in a way how Prabhupada taught. You see? Prabhupada said, if you become a guru, you have to become my prototype. Not only guru, he included temple presidents and GBC.
Yeah, that's in the letter to Hansa.
Yeah, they all must become my prototype. Well, that means you got to be Krishna conscious 24 hours and you don't sleep. That's another thing. If you look constantly in Prabhupada's books and publications and lectures, he keeps saying you got to be Krishna conscious 24 hours. That means a guru is not supposed to sleep. Prabhupada didn't sleep because he said sleep is Maya. That means Prabhupada was contradicting himself? No, he was in samadhi. Because while so-called sleeping, he was thinking of Krishna's Leelas. Then that's not sleep, because sleep is forgetful of Krishna. But who can say they don't sleep, that they're in samadhi 24 hours? I don't know anybody. Do you? So if they haven't conquered the genitals, how can they conquer the genitals if they have female secretaries? And I saw in one, there were 50 girls lined up dancing right in front of the guru. How can he maintain his sex life? Yeah. How can he maintain no illicit sex? Prabhupada uses the example, fire and butter. Show me where butter doesn't melt in front of fire. It all melts. So to have that, Prabhupada, he instituted that women should stay behind. You see? They stay behind. That's the Vedic culture. Lord Chaitanya, in his time, he wouldn't let a woman, they had to look from far away. And there's a stricture in Shastra that one should not get close, whether male or female, to the Acharya. Sometimes on morning walks, people would bump into Prabhupada because they were crowding around, and that's an offense. That's an aparad.
There is a conversation with this Nitai, and Prabhupada tells him, don't get too close. Just
Yes.
the day before.
Oh, there's many. There's many like that. You sit over there, he would say. If you were sitting in the room and sitting right next to Prabhupada, he would say, move. You don't get too close. That's a stricture in the Shastra, but they don't follow that. The gurus get as close as they can to their female subjects, their female disciples.
Well, sometimes they take
And they do secret life, because nobody knows, and their disciples hide it. That's happened with several gurus where they hid from the general public their fall downs, because they felt sorry. What is this feeling sorry? This is nonsense. It's either you're a guru or you're not a guru. You see? So there are there's 8 processes of subtle sex, and to keep a woman as a secretary is an attachment. Even if there's not real sex, there's subtle sex, and that's just as bad as real sex for a sannyasi and a guru. You see? Prabhupada sometimes had some of the women cook for him, but they never served him. That was done by the secretaries or the servants, the male servants, but never by the woman. They could cook, though, if there was not a male cook. But Prabhupada was very strict on that thing, so we should follow his example. Not manufacture something new because it's a new age. What do you mean a new age? Prabhupada, the Bhagavad Gita was spoken 5,000 years ago. And he said, I'm repeating the same thing that was spoken 5,000 years ago. So why should we change it? Who authorized you to change it? Because it's a new age? There's no such thing as a new age. It's millions of years old. It was spoken to the sun god, and it hasn't changed since then. What gives you the right to change it? Therefore, Prabhupada said, if you want to change the Bhagavad Gita, go write your own book. But don't steal from Krishna and manufacture.
The ganja smoking.
Yeah.
The Bhagavad Gita says,
Yeah.
if you want to smoke ganja, don't do it.
Yeah.
Krishna's hand.
Yeah.
With your hand.
Yeah. But don't take Krishna's words and change it or interpret it. Then you're a Mayavadi. So these people who are changing are actually Mayavadis in disguise, you see. But people don't have the brain substance to see that because they haven't studied Prabhupada's books, and they haven't studied Prabhupada the person, which you can get from the recordings, 3,500 recordings. There's a reason why there's 3,500 recordings, because there's a lot of things in the recordings, I'm sorry to say, are not in the books, you see.
Yeah, I understand the recordings in the books is like you have these two concepts of the Vedas. You have the Shruti and the Smriti.
Right.
Right, so the Shrutis are the books, because Prabhupada dictated them.
Right.
Thanks to your service.
Right.
So you gave Prabhupada the first thing.
Yeah.
And the Smriti is Prabhupada's application of the books in day-to-day activities.
And showing by example.
Yes.
You see? Not simply preaching it, but showing that he followed it. He
followed it.
Yeah, and how
So
he
we can
followed.
learn.
Oh, he did more than follow. He would sleep 2-3 hours a day in samadhi, you know, where he told us we could sleep 5 or 6 hours. But the guru can't sleep 5 or 6 hours. They got to follow the Goswamis. If they're writing books, they got to sleep 1 or 1.5 hours. And sometimes he said how to live in Radhakund, because he knew devotees would want to live there. Mm-hmm. But we don't know how to live there. So he says, So he says that we have to follow Raghunath Das Goswami. He taught us how to live in Radhakund. Now, what were some of the characteristics? Well, for one thing, he only ate butter every other day. So if you live in Radhakund, you got to eat just some little butter every other day. Prabhupada said butter. So, second, you got to do physical dandavats, hundreds of them, even when it's 45 degrees. Who's doing that? Hundreds of physical dandavats. And the rest of the time chanting japa. No time for sleeping. Then you can live in Radhakund. You see? And even the Goswamis who were writing books, Prabhupada said they would eat 1 or 2 chapatis a day. And sometimes they would forget to eat. Because they had complete control of 3 things. Their genitals, their food, and their sex life. I mean, their sleeping. They forgot to sleep. You see? That's a proper guru. If the guru is not doing that, then he's not a guru. He's a fake guru. But people have no brain substance, and they have sentimental love for their guru, but they don't know what is a guru according to Srila Prabhupada's standard. And if then we would have no problems in ISKCON, and ISKCON would be more united. For instance, when they go on parikram, they don't go together, they go separate because they have their own separate movement. This one guru goes this side, another guru goes that side. Why don't they go together to show ISKCON is one big happy family, which it was when Prabhupada was physically present. He took us on parikram in 1971. He never said that we should go separately. We should all go together. You see, but they don't do that because they're afraid that maybe their disciples who don't know anything might join another guru who does know something. You know, because it's a popularity poll. It has to do with if you're popular, nice, if you're sexy, you know, if you don't wear a shirt and show your body. It's based on that.
They want to be pure devotees when they're not.
Yeah.
But the qualification is not that. So
yeah.
Basically buried.
Yeah, it's based on the body. You know, if I show off my chest, and you know, the girls will join with me. You see, so the whole thing is based on sexual attraction, because most of the disciples of the gurus are women. Oh, well, you told me. I saw it online, actually. There were 50 women lined up. I don't know how many men there were because you couldn't see them. And they were all dancing right in front of the guru. I saw one guru at a fashion show, and the women were half dressed, showing their midriffs to the brahmacharis. And the announcer said, "Boy, I bet all the brahmacharis are dreaming of this girl." What a thing to say at an ISKCON festival. But this is manufacturing. This is going on. They're not following in Prabhupada's footsteps because they don't have the spiritual power to purify. Otherwise, their disciples will leave them. Whereas Prabhupada purified us because he had the strength, the spiritual strength to change us. They don't have that. The only reason why these people even came to Krishna was through Prabhupada's books in the first place. And their training will come from the books, not from the guru. How can he when he's flying in and flying out sometimes the same day to get the guru dakshina, you know, to stay in expensive houses and expensive places. So these things are going on. We have to rectify it. It's up to the GBC. Of course, they're very weak. They don't want to disturb things. They just want to keep it going as an institution, and soon will become a Ramakrishna institution.
What?
Ramakrishna institution.
But isn't, I mean, the original dome is that the guru is above. Of course, that has changed, right?
Yeah.
Or it is still like
No, the guru is dead.
Okay.
And now I'm the guru. They think they're number 33.
Yes. And
They may not say it, but in their brain they think that I'm the next. But there isn't going to be a next, because Prabhupada said his books will be the law books for 10,000 years. That means he's the Acharya.
but didn't they change that dome stands for? I forgot. Direction of management. That the GBC is about everyone.
Well, Well, Prabhupada wanted that.
Okay, he wanted
He wanted the GBC
to be above.
above the sannyasis.
Yes, but not about him.
No, not about him. But now, because of money,
Yes.
the gurus have all the money. That's why I want them to declare their assets. And they should give that money to the temples where their disciples come from, instead of keeping it in their private bank accounts and living a luxurious life. You see, the gurus live like grihastas, and the grihastas live like brahmacharis. The whole Varna ashram is crossed. It's crisscrossed. The grihastas live very poorly and very sincerely, trying to bring up their children, and the gurus are multimillionaires.
So would you say that, like, who has to start
The GBC,
GBC?
they have, Prabhupada said, they have final say over the management of ISKCON.
Okay.
So if you're a guru in ISKCON,
Yes.
you got to follow that. Otherwise, go start your own institution. But you can't follow. You can't use ISKCON to get rich, because then there'll be fall down, like what happened with some gurus. Because they got so much money, they fell down with their students.
Women.
They marry their own students, which is incest. According to Prabhupada, I have a quote that says, if a guru marries his disciple, it's incest. So that's what's going on in our society. So how can anybody have any respect? There won't be any respect until the GBC exerts its power, which is what Prabhupada wanted. But they won't do that because they're weaklings. You see?